At the heart of debates surrounding immigration policy, you often hear the sentiment that what Americans want to see is fairness in the system, including that those who enter the country illegally should not be rewarded for doing so, as they are, in essence, jumping the line in front of those who enter legally and pursue citizenship. Whether those who do are being treated fairly these days is one matter. Another is just how difficult it is to become a U.S. citizen if you're not born here. Typically, it is a years-long process, one that's not open to everyone, and to those it is filled with paperwork, appointments, and costs in terms of both time and money that not everybody can afford. The end result here in Houston is that, according to the Houston Endowment, as of 2023, fewer than 10% of Houstonians eligible to become naturalized citizens actually complete the process. So let's learn more about that process now from Ruby Powers, immigration and nationality attorney at Powers Law Group, and Cesar Espinosa, co-founder and executive director of the immigrant rights organization FIEL Houston. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Cesar, let me start with you. What are some of the both legal and financial barriers that most often prevent immigrants from completing the naturalization process?
Well, I'll start with what I say every time I come in here. I'm glad we have 3 hours to discuss this because it is such a complex topic. But I mean, it is very expensive, very costly, not only monetary wise, but also in terms of humanity. For most people that have heard me speaking or when I tell my story, I tell people that I got here in 1990 and I didn't become a U.S. Permanent resident. I'm still not a U.S. citizen. I didn't become a legal permanent resident until May of 2024. So I was here undocumented for 33 years, waiting for that line, waiting for that opportunity to fix my papers. And then when I got the opportunity, you deal with what every other immigrant deals with, that it's a very complex system and it's a very expensive system as well. Not that we're not willing to pay, but for some people it can be unattainable.
Ruby Powers, earlier this month, the Houston Endowment announced a $400,000 grant to the Houston Public Library System to expand its free citizenship classes. The grant will provide stipends for 15 instructors teaching courses at library branches across the city. How does access to free citizenship classes like those at Houston Public Library impact the overall cost and success rate of applicants?
I think it's huge. It's a great opportunity. Just the news yesterday is that there's administrations planning to make the exam even more difficult because they say it's too easy to pass. But having those resources are invaluable. If you don't speak English, you have to wait even longer to have the test in your own language. And so if you have these courses available, it helps with the language as well as passing the civics exam. So it helps minimize that hurdle. But as Cesar was mentioning, there's just so many ways that it takes a while to even get that first step of legal permanent residency and then to later apply for citizenship as well.
And let's talk more about that process then, Cesar. What does happen? Let's say you do get past those initial steps.
Well, every case is different, and everybody, we often hear, and I'm sure Attorney Powers I hear this all the time. Everybody always has the notion of, if my cousin or my friend did it this way, maybe I can do it that way too. But when you get down to it, there's so many complications in immigration law that prevents people from getting citizenship. Trust me, when I graduated from DeBakey High School here in Houston, when I got a 1599 on my SAT, I wish I was a U.S. citizen. I wish there was some sort of law that at 18 years old I could have applied for to say, okay, I'm ready to go to Cornell University. But there wasn't. And so we had to wait until something came about. Then DACA happened and it changed my life. And then eventually I was able to adjust status through my wife, even though that was not what I wanted to do. But it was a circumstance that presented itself, an opportunity. And that was a way that I did it. But there's so many things, family issues, monetary issues, natural disasters, where we have seen people who may be able to apply, but have lost all documents, so they don't have a way to prove legal entry. That affects people's lives. And so I think if there's any takeaway from this conversation, is that I want people to know that even though some people say it's so easy, it's actually the complete opposite of that. It's very difficult.
And just to mention, like, you have to be a legal permanent resident before you can even apply for naturalization. And sometimes when people are calling my office, like, I just want to get citizenship for, so-and-so. And I'm like, wait, hold up. We need to, like, go back and see,
Yes.
are they even eligible for legal permanent residency? And in the United States, we have a lot of different avenues through family-based, diversity lottery, asylum, court, employment, investment. So that is great that we have that here in the United States. But some of them can take years, many years, to obtain. And then once you're a legal permanent resident, you have to qualify for naturalization and wait so many years, either 3 or 5. Have good moral character, pass the civic success, and the language. So there's a lot of hurdles.
I want to come back to good moral character. Let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
But I also want to reiterate something, Cesar, you brought up. You mentioned the scenario where, the cousin comes and says, well, this is what I did, or this is what I heard. Well-meaning people offering what they think is sound advice about a complicated system can create a really awful scenario. How do you separate out the well-intentioned but wrong information from the right information? How do you navigate that?
Well, we're gonna have to definitely come back to the show just on that.
Okay.
But the well-meaning intention, I think people are for the most part, family members are well-intentioned and they want their family members to get status. But people have to be really careful and people have to look for correct sources of information. We always tell people, consult multiple attorneys. Don't just go with one. Get different opinions. See what viably works for your case. And if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. Right now, we have attorneys out there or form fillers or other people who are lying to people, trying to take their money. And that's a whole other world that oftentimes we don't talk about. And in Houston, it's so prevalent because just the sheer number of immigrants we have here. Everybody wants to not fear deportation anymore. And sometimes they go to these predatory people that will tell them, if you pay me X amount of money, I can get you status. And that's not always the case.
There's always somebody out there that is trying to take advantage of a scenario where somebody's in some way living in fear, and they'll come along and say, well, I can solve this problem, whatever it is for you, and they're making it up. Ruby, what advice would you give as an attorney? I assume who people can turn to and will offer sound advice about how to make the distinction between somebody that is offering a service that may be more of a scam and someone who's not.
Really good question. And I agree with Cesar. Make sure that you do your evaluation of their website, their reputation on reviews, check their status with their bar. Because it is federal, they might be licensed in another state and not found on the Texas State Bar. Do have a few consultations. I know people might say it might sound expensive, but honestly, it's your life on the line, so I think it's worth it. Make sure you feel a good connection. They've had similar cases that you feel like you can communicate with the firm, the staff, and the attorney, and that you have that trust. There's a lot of people out there who are not attorneys. There's a lot of people who say they know how to do things. There's a lot of people trying to do things on their own. And I think my message right now is do not do things on your own. If at a minimum, have a consultation, please, especially naturalization. A lot of legal permanent residents are very confident in their journey. So they're like, I've been a green card holder forever. I can do this. And you know what? This is not the time because USCIS, this is their final chance to see if anybody made a mistake in the past. And if you get denied and you depending on the facts, they could send you to immigration court and try to challenge the fact that you even have your green card in the first place. So do your due diligence and make sure you find the right person to help represent you.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We're talking about the complicated process and costs associated with becoming a U.S. citizen. My guests are Ruby Powers, immigration and nationality attorney at Powers Law Group, and Cesar Espinosa, co-founder and executive director of FIEL Houston. We welcome your questions and comments at 713-440-8870. You can email us at talk@houstonmatters.org. You can also comment on our video stream, which is on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Ruby, as you noted, there is this phrase, this requirement for immigrants seeking citizenship to display, quote, good moral character. And just a few weeks back, the Trump administration expanded that requirement. So let's start with how is that defined?
Well, in the regs, there is a list of things that they consider. So generally, before that memo came out, we would look to things like, have you ever failed to file your taxes? And mostly if you had made up for it by filing them, even if it was late, then you were fine. If you owed taxes, then you just have to have a payment plan, and you still could get approved if that was the only issue. Somewhere in the regs, it even says infidelity is actually a reason to be disqualified for good moral character. But usually they're talking about criminal matters and things like that. But you're right. And so just recently, that memo came out, and they're expanding the definition. In fact, it's almost, I don't even know what the definition is now. It's very vague. And it seems like it's going to come down to officer decision.
Yeah, okay, that was my next question. Who decides?
I don't know. I mean, one person's good
If
moral
you don't know, who does?
I mean, this is really dangerous when they make the guidelines less specific and more vague, because then one person's good moral character could be another person's bad moral character, and who the whole gradation in between. And so, but what we're supposed to do now is we're supposed to submit that, oh, this person's an Eagle Scout, and this person, volunteered at this community service, for years and years, and then it becomes beholden to the officer to decide. I don't know. This is just came out, so no, I don't think anything's been truly adjudicated under this new guidance, and so we're still out to see how this is going to play out.
Cesar, all that aside, we are in the end talking about a process. There is a process to become a U.S. citizen, but it requires a lot of appointments, a lot of steps, and at times money. How many people are just shut out from that process because they can't afford it, or they can't afford to take the time to have the meetings that are required to get there?
So a few years back, there was a study done here in Houston that basically the finding was that majority or average Houstonian cannot afford a $400 emergency or $400 expense. Citizenship is over $700, if I'm not mistaken, maybe, a lot more than that. And it changes every so often, so it gets more expensive. So just on that alone, it prevents a lot of people from being able to apply for it. Add on to that the fact that most folks, I concur with Attorney Powers that you should hire an attorney right now. I mean, like, nobody should be, in our experience, nobody should try to be doing anything right now because things are changing and immigration law is complex. So on top of that, you add attorney's fees. If you have to take time off to go to fingerprint appointments or things like that, all of these things get added. And so a lot of people shy away from it because it's just too much for them. On top of that, although it's important to say, not on top of that, maybe aside from that, we still encourage people to become to naturalize, because as legal permanent residents, you could still be deported. And a lot of people don't know this, and so they live comfortably 10 years at a time, thinking that their green card is going to protect them from all. And then if there's issues or if they get arrested or something, they could still be put in immigration detention.
Let's take a call. We have Greg on the line from Spring. What's your question or comment?
Well, I just wanted to comment that, I've been married for 35 years, and I met my wife, and when in the country that she's from, but she didn't immediately come over here. I came home, I did a fiancé visa, and then I waited 6 months. She came, we got married, she became naturalized, not naturalized, I'm sorry, she became a permanent resident. And that took 10 years, and then she became a citizen. She, in turn, petitioned my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law waited 10 years before she was allowed to come. They waited. My wife always talks about how, I waited. I did it the right way. I mean, I think every country has a right way to go about, coming to the U.S., becoming a permanent resident, and transitioning to a naturalized citizen.
All right, let's talk about it. Ruby, thanks for the call. Is that true? Is there a way for anybody in any country to go through the process and regardless of the number of years, they can become a citizen?
I think, well, first of all, I'm an attorney in the United States about U.S. law. So, but comparatively to other areas, it can be very stringent. I'm not aware of all the other laws in the whole world.
Well, but I just mean in terms of here in the U.S., that somebody can come to the U.S. from any other country around the world, and if they go through the process and do things the right way, they can become a citizen. And then I guess
Not everybody qualifies.
Not everybody qualifies.
Yeah, and I think that's a big misinterpretation of the situation because, like I was mentioning, there's family-based, but that's very specific which family, not everyone. And there's longer waits. Like if you're a Mexican brother of a U.S. citizen, was that 25 years or something ridiculous? And if you found to have done something wrong at the consular appointment, it's all gone. So I think based off of marriage to a U.S. citizen, that's called immediate relative, still can take a while to do the consular processing or what have you. But we do have different ways, but not everyone's eligible. And they might have some inadmissibility, which is a fancy word for like a blemish of some sort from crimes or entering too many times or staying illegally or working illegally or something along those lines or lying to the government. And that keeps them from being eligible.
And it also sounds like the country of origin is key here, too.
Well, it can be for the visa bulletin for how long the wait. And I do think there's a lot of discretion as well.
And also, I think now we're talking about the cost to be able to afford the time. Because some people that are coming from Central America or Mexico, they don't have 10 years to wait because maybe they're being threatened by a cartel or somebody that says, if we find you here next week, we're going to come get you or your kids. And so I think it goes back to the complexity of the entire immigration issue where different factors really, really play into this. And not everybody's story. And I'm happy for this gentleman that he was able to afford monetarily and time-wise and do it the quote-unquote right way, but not everybody has that luxury to be able to wait. And I want to reiterate the fact that 10 years in the grand scheme of things sounds a lot better than 25 years if you're a Mexican national. I mean, those are real timelines that people can go look up right now at the USCIS website.
Cesar Espinosa is co-founder and executive director of FIEL Houston. Ruby Powers is an immigration and nationality attorney at Powers Law Group. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.